Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is Tuesday, June 2nd, 2020, and you have tuned into the Rebel News live stream. Now, normally you see the big boss man himself, Ezra Levent, in this chair, but Ezra is working on a super special project and he needs every Tuesday and Thursday off, and it's going to be worth the wait, folks. Trust me on that. So, in place of Ezra, you have me, David Menzies, and my co-host, Sheila Gunn-Reid from the hinterland of northern Alberta. How you doing this afternoon, Sheila?
You know what? I'm doing great. The world is crazy. I feel like I'm doing better than I deserve, to be quite honest with you. The world's crazy, but the sun is shining here. And David, you look fantastic. I can see under that hat that someone has hit that chia pet with a weed whacker. Am I right?
Oh my goodness, are you channeling Supergirl? Have you got x-ray vision? I hope that surveillance of what's under the fabric stops at the hat, Sheila. I'm a little shy that way, you know. But you know something? It's funny you talk about the world being crazy, and I'd like our viewers to weigh in on this too, because I was coming back from the Queen's Park protest and the Trinity Bellwoods social distancing circles.
Jeepers, so weird.
I had an epiphany. I was speaking to the cameraman Mocha, who's a great guy, and Mocha's much younger than you and I, but I said, Mocha, I think right now I'm going over my entire stay on this planet, and I don't ever remember it being this crazy. I think we're at peak crazy. I'm thinking of all the incredibly important events, whether it was 9/11 or the Gulf Wars or the fall of the Soviet Union. Nothing, I think, Sheila, is as crazy as what we've seen during this Wuhan virus pandemic. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I wake up every morning wondering what part of the book of Revelation we're currently in. We've had plagues, race riots, murder hornets. I'm certain there's got to be a comet hurtling towards the Earth. It'll probably narrowly miss us, but it'll, cause a bunch of doomsdayers. People are talking about how climate change is going to kill us. I think actually Justin Trudeau talked about that today in his Daily Show. So yeah, it's a very strange time to be alive. And I'm trying to make note of it all because I'm sure my grandchildren are going to ask me about it, because the world is definitely not going to end in 12 years.
Yeah, and you just touched upon one more part of the crazy Sunday. This might be the cherry on top. Justin Trudeau taking the moral high ground in race relations, weighing in on the Mr. Floyd shooting. And this was the guy that's lost count of how many times he's worn blackface. He has no shame. It's crazy.
I know. And all of his MPs saying the same thing. We need to take racism seriously. And it's like, look, sister, you didn't take it seriously enough to not run for the Liberals after your boss wore blackface at least 3 times that we know of. You were like, yeah, he's going to be my boss. Where do I sign up? So, give me a break. Yeah, I'm not taking lectures on racism from people who voted for Justin Trudeau. Not at all. I'm not having it.
Well, Sheila, we're already off to the races, but you have to do your little interlude here and tell the folks what it is we're actually trying to accomplish in the next 58 minutes.
We're working. That's right. No, this is the daily live stream show. The Friday show is called Battleground. Ezra hosts it Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, Battleground. David and I are hosting on Tuesdays and Thursdays because the boss is working on a very, very, very important new project. And he also has this big multimedia company to run, Canada's largest independent news network, that takes up a lot of his time. So David and I do this, and it gives you a chance to interact with each other in the live chat on the side there, but it also gives David and I a chance to interact with each other, which is kind of fun because he works in the center of the universe in Toronto, and I work out here in God's country in Alberta. But it also gives you a chance to interact with us by throwing a little money in the super chat, and it'll highlight your comment, and David and I will read it. If it's a question, we'll do our best to answer it. If it's something you'd like me to look into, I always take those notes and spend the next hour after I get off the air Googling. And it helps us pay the bills because we don't get any money from Justin Trudeau. And even if we did qualify for that money, we'd never take it anyway because our ethics are far more important than a little bit of cash in our hand. And before we move on, I'd like to crowdsource something. And maybe people could do that via Super Chat. After I get off the air with David, I'm recording my weekly show, The Gun Show. That's behind a paywall. It's only $8 a month to get yourself access to our 3 shows that sit behind the paywall. David Menzies' fun show, Rebel Roundup, Ezra's nightly show, which is worth the price of admission. And like I said, my show, The Gun Show. Now, normally I have people from outside the network come on to talk about things I care about, like religious freedom, homeschooling, climate change and debunking the myths around that, and pro-oil sands activism, pro-Indigenous activism. I have those people on the show. Oh, and municipal accountability. That's one of my main beats too. But Kian is coming on my show this week because the people have been asking for Kian, and I'm going to give them what they want. But if there's something that you'd like me to ask Kian about, why don't you throw that in a super chat so that I know? Because otherwise, Kian and I are just going to get... it's just going to be like our text messages set to video where we just talk back and forth. So if there's something that the people want me to ask Ian about or for us to talk about, why don't you throw that in the super chat and I'll make a note and I'll be sure to ask him about it. And then you can hear it either on the podcast, which is free, or tomorrow evening at, I think it's 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time when the show goes live.
You know, what do you have to do to get on the Gun Show? I've been around a lot longer than Kian. I've never been on the Gun Show, Sheila Gunn Reid, and
we'll get you on, David, for sure.
I'll have to think of something outrageous like that. But speaking of outrageous, the number one story right now, what's trending, of course, is these riots that are happening south of the border. It's another tragedy in addition to the tragedy of Mr. Floyd being killed, because how does this bring about any kind of justice? How does this bring about any kind of social justice, especially when it's not just the Walmarts and the Targets that are being looted? And by the way, some of those big box stores in those communities might not come back either, Sheila. But when you go into an ethnic community and you go to a mom and pop store, and you loot it and burn it to the ground, and in some cases even beat the proprietors, how in the world is that improving anything? We know, Sheila, this is all about people taking advantage of a crisis, and they are pretending that America is corrupt and the system doesn't work. But it's a falsehood because the cops have been in that incident have been fired. They're being charged. They surely will do jail. So, but there is the process of justice to take place. And I am just besides myself when I see literally mom and pop operators being beaten or in some cases killed, and explain to me how that is bringing any sort of justice to this. And we have our newest rebel, Sheila, Anna. She was down in Washington, D.C., and she was able to shoot some compelling video. So why don't we roll that?
Hi guys, it's Anna Slats, and I'm here in Washington, D.C., where I have been covering the George Floyd protests and Antifa riots for Rebel News. I just wanted to go over some of my thoughts, because last night was the first night I was here on the ground, and it was crazy, to say the least. But when the night started, it was very peaceful. And I have been trying to focus on why such a peaceful, coherent, considerate demonstration of anger devolved into violence and destruction and fires and smashed windows and businesses being looted. And I want to say that occurred, that transition from peace to chaos occurred when a largely white group of Antifa protesters began to call the shots in the demonstration. Around 6 p.m., when the Black Lives Matter protesters were marching on the Capitol, it was all very peaceful. It was very well put together. People were being taken care of, given food, given water, given medical treatment if they needed it. And the air was positive. It was upbeat. It was people expressing themselves in the democratic way that they have the ability to express themselves, that they have the right to express themselves, and that is through a peaceful demonstration, a peaceful protest, expressing their anger at the treatment of African Americans in the United States. It was not until 10 p.m. that things started to devolve into chaos, and that is when the Antifa protesters showed up and they began setting fires, they began burning buildings, they began defacing war memorials. I'm actually just outside of one right now that's being taken care of by the police. There was such a distinct difference between the approaches of Black Lives Matter and Antifa that much of it I caught right on film, people being told by the Black Lives Matter protesters, stop throwing things at the police, stop interacting with the police. This is going to lead to more violence. This is going to lead to more innocent people getting hurt. And of course that would disproportionately impact the African Americans that were in the protest. The white Antifa protesters continued and persisted to destroy, to throw bottles at the police, to throw bottles at the police cars, to throw rocks and stones. And it was an escalation, a very steady escalation. The police began to respond with more and more violence of their own. More flash grenades, more pepper spray, more batons, and even someone got a rubber bullet. He was standing right next to me, and he got hit with a rubber bullet. I want you to take a look at the footage, and I want you to ask yourself if you can see the difference between the approaches of Black Lives Matter, who were out there protesting the wrongful death of George Floyd, and the approach of Antifa, who were destroying needlessly, who were not listening to the Black Lives Matter protesters who were meant to be leading the demonstration.
You know, Sheila, first of all, can we cut to the chase when it comes to Antifa? Can we have some truth in advertising at least? Antifa, of course, stands for anti-fascism, but they're all about fascism. They're bullies, they're thugs, they're violent. So can we maybe just call them FA from now on instead of the anti? Because they're clearly not about being against fascism. That's what they are all about.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, they're out there, you pointed out, they're burning mom and pop stores. But Walmart and the big box stores, they employ people in the community. When you burn down the store, where's the job to go back to? Where do poor people buy their groceries? If you're out there fighting oppression and poverty or whatever you claim your cause that required you to go out and throw bricks at a cop is, if you are fighting those things, if that's what you say, then why are you burning down the store that sells affordable groceries to poor people if you're a poverty fighter, a social justice warrior? The Floyd family doesn't want this. No. You know, that's the most appalling part is they are begging for peace. And this is what they're getting in exchange. It's terrible to watch it unfold. And as conservatives, you cannot write off the complaints of the Black community. Here's the thing. There are many people in the Black community who see the Democrats as oppressors. They are the poverty pimps running their cities. And when you write off the complaints of the Black community, to say that there's no racism out there, of course there's racism out there. We are all against it. But we can't immediately write off what they're saying because we're losing people who are ready to buy into our cause of conservatism.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it should also be stated, you never see the left get enraged about this, but the vast majority of Black males being killed, it's by other Black males, Sheila. And I'm not discounting what happened to Mr. Floyd. Once, and I don't care what happened earlier, if he was putting up a scuffle or what happened, but when the video shows him being subdued, cuffed with an officer on his back, the fight is over. That was murder that we witnessed, simply put. But the point is, when you look at police departments in terms of the murder rate of, say, Black males, it's not even a rounding error compared to what the murder rate is in communities, and you never see the Democrats or the left or Antifa stage marches about that. But when there's an incident like this, they will milk it for all it's worth. And by the way, 100%, you're entitled to protest. I mean, this is a country,
Yep.
The U.S. I'm speaking of course, with the First Amendment. You
Yep.
are allowed, and it's a great thing to see that kind of freedom, to have people march in the streets and have signs and do chants. No problem there. But the moment you start being violent, it is against the law. And like I said earlier, Sheila, it does nothing to serve the cause of justice. Absolutely nothing. And even Mr. Floyd's brother has spoken out about this, wanting this to stop. All you're doing is creating more misery. And when you mention these mom and pop shops being razed to the ground in ethnic communities, it's even worse given that we have this global pandemic that we're still dealing with, and B, when the cleanup happens, when the aftermath happens, you try to get bank financing in some of those communities now. And man, that's a Mount Everest size hurdle. It is just absolutely despicable that these people, especially the Antifa people I'm speaking of here, claim to wrap themselves in social justice, and all they are doing is dispensing even more misery to more innocent people.
Well, and let's talk for a second about politicians, because I generally think politicians are always the problem and never the solution. And it's especially clear in this case with Democrat politicians, and largely to an extent here in Canada. Instead of saying, you know what? Yes, this is a deeply flawed country because the country is full of deeply flawed individuals. That's who we are as people. But this is the best place in the world to be Black, to be religious, to be gay, to be female, to be, name your social demographic. North America, and in particular the United States, best place in the world to be those things. Do they have problems? Absolutely. Is it perfect? No, nothing will ever be. But it is the best place in the world to be those things, and we have to fight to protect it. That's what politicians should be saying. Instead, they're whipping up racial divisions. They're basically painting all cops as bad people, which now justifies the rioters and justifies the attacks on cops. I think last night we saw some get run over in New York. I couldn't even watch the footage. It's so appalling and so bloodthirsty. And these rioters are that which they claim to be protesting. People who are killing other people with reckless, careless abandon. They are the monster they think they're fighting.
100%, Sheila. And I believe we have some super chats already, my friend.
Oh, we've got quite a few. Let's roll back up to the, holy cow, we do have a lot. Okay, we've got one from Kane Enmark. It gives us $2 Canadian. David, you're hot now. Ha ha. That's Kavorka rearing its ugly head one more time.
Where were these women in high school? What the heck?
I think Kane's a fellow, actually.
Holy mackerel. Please, I scare easy.
We've got one from Christian Delorme, $5 Canadian. Love the hat, Dave, and your journalist integrity. And Sheila, you give Alberta journalists, I can't see what the rest, a great name. Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know if I can lift the stature of the rest of the journalists in this province, that's for sure. But I'll look out for me and Kian. We've got one from Primpello8, gives us $2, says, notice all the blackface memes reappearing. Yeah, thanks for reminding us, Justin Trudeau. I nearly forgot what a hypocrite he was on this, because there's just so many other things, so many mistakes that just pile up all the time from Justin Trudeau that it's nice to go back and reflect. And I'm glad the blackface memes are back. We've got one from Proud Boys Calgary. Oh, he's giving us some good news. $5 Canadian. The Cowtown president is going to be a daddy. That's not going to stop me from posting all the daily reminders that CCP must be destroyed. Well, congratulations. Babies are a blessing. We've got one from Sobieski. Sobieski gives us $10 Canadian. Can someone ask Dougie or Dr. Williams? I suppose that's Dougie Ford, I think. Or Douglas Fauci. I don't know. Can someone ask Dougie or Dr. Williams why the densely packed mobs of USA protesters sweating and spitting on each other are not dying en masse from COVID? Yeah, isn't that all of a sudden the pandemic isn't going to kill us anymore? And, you know, how many of those people out there marching, like in Calgary, in Vancouver, and in Toronto, how many of them were the Karens of a week ago, ready to scold you for being in the grocery store without a mask? And now they're out there because their cause for them is more important than the virus, which, I mean, that's up to everybody to make that decision, but they're out there and it's fine now. It's fine. If they were going to call the cops on you for not wearing a mask in Walmart, but they're out there protesting in the streets in front of each other, shouting, screaming. Yeah, spittle, speaking moistly, I think is the right term.
Well, you know, Sheila, I mean, they've had 6 protests in a row every Saturday at Queen's Park. So that's, you know, a month and a half. Many of these people are the same people that keep showing up. So you'd think by now some of them would be wheezing and coughing or in the intensive care unit, but that's not the case. And because we know when you crunch the numbers, I believe in Ontario, 0 deaths under 20, 1 death under 40, and Canada-wide, 82% of the fatalities of the Wuhan virus are in long-term care homes? Are you kidding me? And this premier who campaigned on the slogan, Ontario open for business.
For the people.
Yeah. And when you look at the last ranking, Ontario is 9th out of 10 provinces. Only Newfoundland is worse. Are you kidding me? How is that open for business? And meanwhile, there's a regression going on. We've had, in the last several days, a restaurant owner, Minden, threatened with a $500,000 fine and jail time for opening up his restaurant in which he was practicing social distancing. We had an ice cream truck slapped with a fine, even though I thought curbside delivery was kosher. And, you know, this is the other thing, Sheila, when I reached out to the ministry the other day about this, tell me if this is a complicated question for you. Can you or can you not in Ontario drive an ice cream truck and vend ice cream? And the response I get back is, here are the regs, pages and pages, blah, 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 blah. And it's up to me and the ice cream truck driver to read through these and we determine it. And I respond again, can you just answer yes or no? Can he serve ice cream from a truck? Yes or no? And the answer I get back is, we stand by the statement we gave you earlier. And Doug Ford, if you recall, in 2018, campaigned on getting rid of red tape. And meanwhile, I received from one of his spokes thingies enough red tape to mummify myself. So, yeah, it's so disappointing, Sheila.
And it's funny to see the opposite unfolding in Alberta, and it's much to the chagrin of the NDP. The answer to the pandemic here in Alberta seems to be private industry and private business. Jason Kenney is distributing free packages of masks, the disposable masks, and he's doing it in a way that utilizes existing private infrastructure and private infrastructure that's already practicing heavy-duty sanitation protocols. And you don't even have to get out of your car to do it. So he's replicating what's happening in Taiwan, because Taiwan, you can get your mask as a prescription at the pharmacy. But this is a car civilization here in Alberta. Jason Kenney has decided that we're going to distribute these masks for free at Tim Hortons drive-thrus, McDonald's drive-thrus, and A&W drive-thrus. Now, that covers the basis for everybody. If you're one of those people that still goes to Tim Hortons after they picked a fight with the oil patch, fine, get your mask there. If you're one that still goes to A&W after they picked a fight with Canadian farmers over ethical beef or over hormone-free beef, which is ridiculous, you can still go there. And if you care about going to a company that says that we don't produce food without Canadian farmers, you go to McDonald's. But that's the way that everybody can get the masks without having to hire extra government workers. Like the NDP wanted us to go get them from the post office. The post office, when I'm going to get groceries in Fort Saskatchewan, the post office is 20 kilometers in the other direction in our Drawson. So, and when I go get groceries, like most rural people do in the major municipality, I stop and grab myself a coffee I didn't have to make myself. That's how it works. And the NDP are outraged because they said we should be doing drop-offs of these things at the post office, and then rural people have to make a special trip to the post office, which is a special circle of hell for rural people to get them, because then a government worker's involved. It's very funny to see how these two conservative premiers are doing things so drastically different from each other.
But wait a minute, Sheila. I thought the NDP was all about reducing one's carbon footprint. Now they want you to put all those extra kilometers going to a unionized government employee. So what's more important, a unionized government employee justifying his or her position, or the fate of planet Earth? I'm confused.
Oh, I know. We still have more super chats to get through. There's so many. We've got one from Proud Boys Calgary. Again, thank you, Justin. Gives us $5 Canadian. Ask Kian if he's a proud Western chauvinist who refuses to apologize for creating the modern world. I see you're trying to trick him into joining Proud Boys. That's very nice. Clever tactic. Melody Spence gives us $5. I just requested a lawn sign. Can't wait to get the book this weekend. Thank you all for exposing the truth. I don't know what lawn sign we're talking about. Do we have a lawn sign out for a new book, or is that for the Libranos?
I believe it's the Libranos lawn sign, Sheila.
Well, Melody, I hope you're close to David so he could drop you off one.
Yeah, I'll do it. Why not?
Yeah, if you're close to me, I'll do it too. I hand-delivered so many of those signs. Frank Daniel, $5 Canadian. David, where's your press card? Me and my wife will make you one up. Yeah, where is your press card?
Do you think that will get us into a Justin Trudeau press conference, or will they still give me the bum's rush and twist my arm like they did to Kian last week?
You know what? I got to stop right here, because there's something happening on Twitter that's really annoying me right now. And it's this journalist for Global News, Sean O'Shea. And he is, I think it's Brian Pasifum is how I say his name. I'm not sure. He works for the Toronto Sun. I like his work. I think his work is great. And he was sharing Anna's videos on Twitter of the work she's doing on the front lines of a mob. Like, that's actual journalism. And this Sean O'Shea from Global News saunters up and he goes, that I'm sort of like, I'm sure Anna's a good person, but that company is Voldemort, and basically scolding Brian for sharing the good work and the interesting work, the valuable work that Anna's doing. And if you go back further on Sean's timeline, it's not really all that important. But he's also simultaneously outraged at journalists who are getting arrested during these riots. And it's like, well, Sean, yeah, that's terrible. And we know exactly how it feels, because one of our journalists got strong-armed and hauled out of a press conference. And I've personally been hauled out of a press conference by sheriffs who had guns. Yeah. And you were hauled out by the Conservatives and slapped in handcuffs. And I can't see any condemnation of that. Actually, I see that he's justifying it. He's saying, oh, you guys do it all for stunts. And then you do it for fundraising. We're fundraising legal fees to fight for press freedom because the civil liberties associations who are supposed to exist to help us with these things don't. But that's what we're dealing with the mainstream media. They don't want you to see our journalists doing real, valuable journalism because they are so overtaken by their emotions about us. Yeah. And again, job security. As long as the Sean O'Sheas exist, so will the Sheila Gunn Reeds.
Isn't that amazing, Sheila, that standing up for freedom of the press, freedom of expression, freedom of speech, in Sean O'Shea's universe, that's a stunt, you know.
Yeah.
But he'll play, and he'll demean us as a journalistic outlet, but he'll use our footage. And he'll play it really nice and safe. But you know what, Sean? Maybe there'll be a day where you say something that's deemed to be off color by the politically correct mob, and maybe you'll be a victim of cancel culture, and then maybe you'll be out in the cold and nobody will be coming to your defense. And as you ponder, why isn't anyone coming to my defense? Maybe you can look back at how your behavior was when it came to your colleagues just trying to tell the other side of the story. Because we're telling the other side of the story and not the global, corporate approved, politically correct, government approved story, we're not to be taken as legitimate. How shameful. Yeah. What happened to the media, Sheila? And it happened so quickly, because...
Yeah, and I thought the left and the mainstream media, but I repeat myself here, I thought that they were against victim blaming. But it sure sounds a lot like victim blaming when you say Kean was asking for it. And then they say stuff like, we are violating court orders, and we are thumbing our noses at the police. I'm pro-cop. I don't want them to get run over. And I don't, as we're seeing Antifa do, and I definitely don't want the integrity of the RCMP abused by Justin Trudeau to strong-arm journalists and throw them out of press conferences. And excuse me, but we don't violate court orders. We go and get them. And we get them so that we can report. And it just shows how little grasp they even have on the topic of rebel news. They hate us. They don't know why.
Oh, I don't know, Sheila. I think maybe going to the Federal Court of Canada with our 2 young legal eagles and taking on Justin Trudeau's 5 bureaucratic lawyers, I guess that's a stunt too, to get us into the parliamentary debates back in October, or in this case, to get into a press conference. Is that, according to Sean O'Shea and his colleagues, a stunt as well? Give me a break. Anyways, you've got more super chats, I believe.
We do. We've got one from Captain Untlick. $2 Canadian. Is Menzoid keeping the hat? You know what? It looks that way. David, are you?
I think I am. Well, maybe we'll put it to the people. Let's have a poll or something, Sheila.
Yeah.
Mr. Producer said lose it, I think. Was that what you said? Lose it. So that's one for the lose it camp.
Okay.
Yeah.
We've got
noted.
Dragon Joe gives us $10 Canadian. I do think the U.S. needs to look at their training regime for their police force. It feels lacking. I'm a martial artist, and there are many takedowns that don't result in bodily harm that subdue people. Yeah, I mean, this is all going to have to be sorted out in a court of law, and that's the point of the United States is due process. And even bad cops get due process. That's how it works. And this street justice is just destroying communities and creating division. And it's not going to work out the way the left thinks it will. I think there are people in the left and in the inner city who are going to vote for safety and law and order. People who normally vote Democrat, but see the Democrats as whipping up these riots. And I think it'll just drive more people into the arms of Donald Trump.
Yeah. And when it comes to due process, Sheila, that's very important. Do it correctly. Do it. Don't rush it, because when you don't follow those directives, you get a situation like we have today in which O.J. Simpson is a free man scouring every golf course of America to find out who the true killer is. So that's why you want to do it by the book so you don't make any mistakes and there's no loopholes to be taken advantage of.
Yeah, it's just like Justin Trudeau looking for the real racist. We've got one from Primpal08, gives us $5 Canadian. Do you think releasing violent felons for health and welfare purposes might have something to do with the violence? Do we even need to ask? Well, I don't know. I don't know how many of them are participating in these riots or just going about whatever scumbaggery they were doing before the COVID-19 had them released. But yeah, that's 25% of Ontario's jail population were released because of COVID-19. So
yeah, we'll let out violent offenders, but we'll slap a ticket on the good humor man for delivering ice cream.
Yeah.
Like I said, Sheila, at the beginning of the show, Peak insanity, 2020. Where do we go from here?
Oh, God. We've got one from David Anderson, $2 Canadian. It's all manipulation to bring down Trump 2020. Any opportunity to have a riot with these people.
Yep.
And I don't think it would matter if it were Trump or any other conservative. These people would burn down their own cities to spite a conservative in the White House.
Yep.
Daniel Price, $5 Canadian. Canada, does Canada have any town halls at all? Only media questions are asked at public addresses. Yeah, and those media questions are compliant reporters asking a simple man easy questions. They're not Cian Bexty or David Menzies in there asking tough questions at all about Justin Trudeau's own history.
I don't know, Sheila. You know, Justin is looking good these days. I really do want to find out what kind of shampoo he's using.
Yeah. We've got one from MVP, gives us $5 Canadian. What are your thoughts on global protests following Floyd's death? They jumped to the conclusion that it was motivated by racism. Yeah, that's another thing. We don't know if this is motivated by racism or if it's motivated by just bad policing. Yeah. We don't know that. That conclusion apparently has already been drawn. If I recall correctly, this cop was involved in other, I think, use of force problems in the past. But yeah, we don't know if this is racism at all.
No.
So what's happening here?
And we know, you know, you and I think most of us here at The Rebel, if not all of us, Sheila, we are pro-police. But we can't put the blinders on, and we can't say there's no such thing as bad cops and even bad police departments in certain cases. We know where the rot sets in, and it is systemic. But the idea that the whole system is flawed and and it has to be burnt to the ground, and I mean, there's even chance of no more police. Well, how would that work when the next time you're being harassed by some bully? Because these are also the same people that are against the Second Amendment, typically, Sheila. So they just want a nation of victims. They just want the law of the jungle. Doesn't make sense to me.
Speaking of Second Amendment, and I think this is a great way to segue into good cops, because we've just talked about bad cops.
Yep.
And there's a sheriff in Florida.
Yes.
I think it's Sheriff Grady Judd or something like that. Like, it is such a Florida sheriff name. I'll Google it while it's on. But he is, I love him. I want to be a snow Floridian. I'm a lost Floridian. When I heard how he not only encourages his citizens to own guns, but to use them to defend their property against horrible people, I might be in love. Justin, Mr. Producer, do you think you could roll that?
We have received information in social media that some of the criminals were going to take their criminal conduct into the neighborhoods. I would tell them, if you value your life, you probably shouldn't do that in Polk County, because the people of Polk County like guns. They have guns. I encourage them to own guns. And they're going to be in their homes tonight with their guns loaded. And if you try to break into their homes to steal, to set fires, I'm highly recommending they blow you back out of the house with their guns. So leave the community alone. And we'll do our best to support the community. But ladies and gentlemen, make no mistake about it. All of that ugliness has taken away from what we're united about. We're united about the conduct that you saw with George, where his life was taken with the knee to the neck. It's horrific, and there's not enough words to explain that. Let's get the focus on that.
You know, and Sheila, I have to say that it seems that some people are taking that to heart, such as the gun shop owner in Philadelphia last night at 4:15 in the morning. 4 men broke into his shop. Now, let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe, they thought there was a Midnight Madness sale and the shop was locked up in error. And maybe their internet was down. They couldn't shop online. They just wanted to browse. Well, anyways, one of those 4 men is dead. The other 3 are in hospital. And, what is the alternative? Because here's the thing, Sheila. If those 4 individuals weren't met with that force, with what they were going to take out of that shop, the guns and ammunition to join the riot, what were they going to use that for? So in effect, I think this gun shop owner saved lives by doing what he did.
Yeah, something similar happened. I think it was private security for one of the journalists. I forget which city that the riot was happening because there's so many over the course of so many days. But private security saw the rioters trying to take an AR-15 out of a cop car, and he dropped the guy like a ton of bricks. He just reacted so instantly. And it's showing people, this is why the United States has a Second Amendment. And it's because of, like Polk County. That's a sheriff, Grady Judd, who realizes, look, Polk County's a big place. I can't get to you. I can't. So you got to take care of yourself when danger is imminent. And, you rightly point out that these are the same protesters who want none of us to own guns, yet they will steal guns and use them against innocent people, innocent business owners to just create chaos and mayhem. But we're the criminals for wanting to defend our homes and families and property. It's quite remarkable.
And when it comes to the leftist elite, Sheila, they are typically living in gated communities with armed private security forces. So again, it's the one law for thee and one law for me mentality. More super chats, Mr. Producer, is barking in my ear again.
Yes. Hillary Waugh gives us $5 Canadian. Anyone watch the rocket launch on Saturday? Any thoughts? You know what? I did watch a little bit of it. And you know what? This is one of those things where I'm excited about a private-public partnership. That sometimes the private sector moves faster, better, more innovative than government on these sorts of things. So I'm kind of excited to see how this turns out, because for so many years we were told that only the government can do certain things, and that's why you need to have the government in all aspects of your life, because they can only do these certain things. Only they can do this kind of research. Well, apparently not, which is, I'm happy to see this.
Oh, and back in the day, I mean, Sheila, I did a commentary last year when it was the 50th anniversary of Apollo 11. I was 7 years old in 1969. Moon Mania, I still remember it so vividly. And also what came out of that were technological leaps and bounds, because, when you put a man on the moon, it is rocket science, quite literally. And, we benefited so immeasurably by that. And it was sorry to see in the 70s the sad decline of NASA. But if government agencies like NASA aren't going to be doing this heavy lifting anymore, then, more power to others that are.
Yeah, I think it's great. We've got one from Travis Coulson, gives us $6.99. I'll take a lawn sign representing advertising Rebel News. Well, there's that person that David that you interviewed we just found out about it, who had gone out of their way to put up their own Librano sign that we didn't even have a part of. They just decided on their own cost that they should do it and just promote the truth-telling that we do here at Rebel News, which I thought was really great.
Oh, it was fantastic. That was out in Cobourg, Ontario. It cost them something like $700 of his own money to make that sign. And here's the cherry on the sundae, Sheila. This individual voted Liberal in 2015. Yeah. And, I guess when he read Ezra Levin's superb Librano's book, wow, did he ever have a come to Jesus moment in terms of voting a Liberal? There he is. Oh, what a guy. Salt of the earth. And good on him for going out of his way to do that. So fantastic.
Yep. However, if any of our viewers at home want Rebel merchandise, we do have a store on the website. I forget I really should know the exact URL, but we do have a store where you can get bumper stickers, t-shirts, and other fun stuff. And there's some really fun, Alberta separation stuff in there that I need to order. However, the logo is green, so when I'm filming in that shirt, I can't be behind my green screen. I'll have to be out on the beauty of my farm so that everybody can see it. Oh, thank you, Justin, for bringing that up. That's great.
And Sheila, it is rebelnewsstore.com. And look at all that wonderful merchandise.
Yeah,
wow.
It's great. It's
look good
fun.
and be a political
great
activist
stuff.
at the same time. Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a pretty horrible photo of me. Skip that
Zoom
one,
out.
folks. But all the other, no, keep going. We're trying to sell stuff here, Justin. What are you doing here? But look at that. Fantastic. And more super chats, I understand, Sheila.
And the next question is about my T-shirt, which, can you guys see it? It says Hillary for Prison 2016. Actually, this is from the InfoWars store. And I'm still waiting for Hillary to go to prison. Who knows? At the very least, witness intimidation for what she did to Bill's rape victims so many years ago. But there's a whole host of crimes since then. She's been a one-woman crime spree for like 4 decades.
You know, since you mentioned your T-shirt, Sheila, I'm glad you clarified that, because originally I did think it was the actual Hillary 2016 shirt. And I thought, oh, what's going on here? And secondly, I'm going to go off on a little tangent here and into one of my pet peeves. I don't like it when women wear T-shirts with writing on the chest, because you're attracting our attention to the area where we're not supposed to be staring at. And it's just not right. You know, several years ago, I don't know, have you heard of a store called Guess, Sheila?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks,
so
David, yeah.
Several years ago, I'm in the lineup for a roller coaster at Canada's Wonderland, and I saw a woman with, and right on her chest, it said the word Guess. So I said, 36B, and she gave me such a dirty look, you know. Maybe so. Then later, I found out, of course, it's a fashion label, but I thought it was a command. And so, anyways, ever since then, I don't like that. So, can you just, make it a habit to just wear a plain top so I'm not distracted and confused?
Yeah, David, I'll get right on that. I'll throw out my entire wardrobe and get something more boring.
Just wear a burqa is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I'll borrow yours, the one you voted in that one time.
Yeah, I'll send it over.
Possibly my favorite David Menzies video ever. I don't know if you've seen that. It's way back in the Rebel archives. He went to vote in 2015 wearing a burqa, which was an interesting experiment. But I don't understand why he had to carry the purse and use the high-pitched voice before he voted in the burqa. I don't know what that was all about.
Sheila, there are no pockets in a burqa, so I had a little area to carry my ID and my car keys. And of course, the point we were trying to make, and sadly it came true, is that I was not asked to unveil to prove my identity voting in a federal election. Unbelievable.
Yeah. I thought the purse was a nice touch. It made the outfit hang together. And I think you wore like gloves too, like little lady gloves, like cocktail gloves too.
Well, it's very sunny that day, and us gingers with those UV rays, Sheila.
Yeah. Well, yeah. We've got one from Kane Enmark, $5 Canadian, says that I think the mainstream media missed saying 3 of 4 cops not white in the George Floyd killing. I've heard that reported. I don't know the veracity of the accuracy of that, but that would bust up a narrative, wouldn't it? We've got one from Frank Daniel, gives us $5 Canadian. Do you think that the Rebel can get in on Doug Ford's press conferences? I think if David keeps up his criticism of Doug Ford, I think Doug Ford might drop the hammer on David and say, you're not welcome anymore.
Oh, I think it's been dropped, Sheila. I think either 3 or 4 times I went into the teleconference one, again, allegedly random generated. I got shut out. It was like almost an hour and a half of listening to other questions being asked. So maybe, I don't know, I can show up in person, who knows? But it's staggering. It's sad that, I'll try again. What the heck? Maybe it was random chance, and maybe I'm going to win the Lotto Max lottery tonight. So let's see. I'll give it a 4th shot, Sheila.
David, speaking of which, is your video, I forget what was on our list of things to talk about. Is your crop circle video on this list?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Shall we run a little video of that?
Please.
Okay. Hey guys, have you picked out your circle for this weekend?
Yes, Iona's gonna be there, and I'm gonna go there.
You know, I think you made fascinating picks, those circles. They're so circular.
Well, the thing is, we're in Toronto here, and location is everything. So this is why we came, and make sure we got good spots, you know?
They should put numbers on them so you can maybe come up in the front and reserve them. This is amazing.
Hey sir, have you picked out a circle for this weekend?
I'm wondering if they're picking out a circle or I'm picking out a circle.
Your dog was marking its territory. It was urinating in several circles. I mean, does that mean you have those 4 circles reserved for this weekend for yourself, sir?
All the ones with yellow in it will be his this weekend.
Last Saturday was ridiculous. It was like Woodstock over here. It's amazing. You know, I love seeing people out in the park, and it's fantastic, but this is ridiculous. You know, I don't know.
But you know, sir, most of the people, wouldn't you say on Saturday, they were in their 20s and 30s?
That's correct, yes.
We have had 1 death in Ontario of someone under 40. So statistically, you run a 6 times bigger risk crossing Queen Street and dying of getting Wuhan virus here.
I'm just wondering how they're going to bounce their balls in their little circles over here. I'm actually looking forward to the weekend to see how this all works out.
Yeah, well, you know the new rules, sir. Only touch your own balls during the Wuhan virus.
It's the other people I'm worried about, though, where they're going. You know, like I have elderly parents and friends and people, so.
People are going to be coming to the park no matter what rules, no matter what fences. So at least people kind of gravitate towards what they see. And when they see a field of circles, it's like, you know what? I gather there. And people that want to go outside of that, that's up to them.
By the way, what is the out of bounds rule? Are we playing NFL rules? You know, when you catch the ball, both feet have to remain in bounds? Or are we playing college and CFL rules where I can put 1 foot out of bounds? I'm betting he wants NFL rules. We got to have both our feet in bounds. Ooh, speak of the devil. 2 bylaw enforcement officers. Let's see what the rules are so we don't get an $880 ticket.
So the circles are for 6 feet radius. That's you're supposed to be inside the 6 foot radius.
Now, is it NFL rules or CFL rules for a fair catch? If I put 1 foot out, is that considered a violation, or do I have to keep both inside the circle?
Well, I think you're supposed to be using some common sense, and I would really appreciate that not being so close to my face, please.
Well, we're 6 feet away.
I understand that, and you're holding it less than 6 feet away from your mouth, which can contaminate me. So I would like that further away from my face, please, sir.
You're not going to give me one of those $880 tickets, are you?
Well, if you don't comply with what I ask you to do, then that may be a possibility right now, right?
Well, I'm not confining you. You can keep walking away.
No, I can't, sir, because my job is to answer your questions and educate the public.
Okay, well, that's what I came here for, to get educated. So I'm wondering if I put 1 foot out or like a pinky toe out, would I get an $880 ticket?
Well, I don't know the answer to that question right at the moment.
Well, then how can you educate me if you don't know the answers?
That's a very good question.
Very good question.
You know, Sheila, I don't know where you start. First of all, I think that video makes the point of peak insanity in the world right now. But, you know, that poor bylaw officer looking at the microphone and thinking that the Wuhan virus is like a flea. It can jump off the microphone and go into his respiratory system. And he's the guy giving education.
Do you know what? When I watch that, I think, you know what? This doesn't do much to quell my Western separatist tendencies when I see that. Because I think, what kind of absolutely insane, brainwashed people are headed off to the park to sit in all these schizophrenic curling rink circles all over the place, like a bunch of crazy people. And then I realized I just stood in a line for like an hour to get into IKEA the other day because my daughter wanted something from there. And the whole time I'm standing in the line thinking, this is how the cattle feel when they go to the abattoir. This is exactly how it feels. You get to the end and then you just get a bolt gun in your head. Like, that's what it felt like. You're just weaving back and forth. So as much as I'm critical of Toronto for even tolerating this, we're doing this everywhere, and I find myself doing it too, much to my great embarrassment.
By the way,
crazy.
Sheila,
I can't even believe people are participating in this, but I am too.
It is especially being tolerated in Toronto because Mocha and I, that was on the Thursday last week when they painted the circles, 400 circles, $12 per circle, by the way. Mocha and I went back on Saturday just to check out the compliance. I would say it was 99.99%, and probably with good reason, because in addition to the circles, we had bylaw and Toronto police officers in short pants on bicycles doing figure eights around the circles. It was something out of an Orwellian nightmare.
Like sharks on bikes, just waiting for you to hang your leg out of the boat and just bite you with an $880 ticket.
Yeah. And I almost felt like saying, "Excuse me, officer, can I leave my circle? I have to pee now."
It's crazy. Like, it's crazy to watch what we've allowed ourselves to become.
It's true.
It is. I think that is the real thing in all of this, is how quickly we just complied until we find ourselves sitting in a 6-foot circle in a park being circled by bylaw officers, and it's totally normal.
Do you know?
Totally normal. The new normal. Which is crazy.
You make a great point. The compliance and the buying into the false media narrative, and on the other side, governments, and I hope we can get to it, what you talked about, what's happening in Edmonton, getting a taste of totalitarianism, and as Ezra said a few weeks ago, it tastes pretty good. You know, this idea of not abiding by those, nonsensical things like the Charter Rights and the Bill of Rights, and being able to, do a search without a warrant. And it's scary how quickly this has caught on in the name of a pandemic that is basically, we talked about the stats earlier, 82% of the deaths are in long-term care homes. And when all the inquiries and royal commissions look back at how we handled this, Sheila, I hope that comes up as the disgraceful point of this whole exercise we've been going through, that we shut down entire economies around the world instead of directing resources to those who are truly vulnerable to this, the elderly, the infirm, those with respiratory diseases. And it's a matter, I think, of the cure being worse than the curse. We have people so depressed they're committing suicide. We have spousal abuse spiking. I mean, how is this in anyone's best interest? This Wuhan virus, we have learned, it is not Ebola. It is not something like that bylaw officers thought can jump off microphones and go into your lungs, right? So I hope this is what we're going to learn. But now that I think we have learned enough to open these economies, much like Sweden and Taiwan have opened theirs.
Yeah, I mean, Taiwan didn't even really close theirs.
That's true.
Yeah, like South Dakota, they didn't close anything. They just kept on giving her. They kept their meat plants open, everything.
Yep.
I just want to touch on that story that I did about the city of Edmonton, because Edmonton City Council is kind of mad at me for pointing a few things out there. Because they did renew their local state of emergency. And while they are reviewing it, they said again on Thursday, the law does give them the ability to extend it for 90 days without question. And that local state of emergency does give them the power of expropriation and conscription and searchless warrants. And they justified renewing that local state of emergency using 6 people out of a health region that is far larger than 1 million people. There's not even one hospitalization per hospital happening in the greater Edmonton health region right now. One person is in intensive care. And that's what they used to justify renewing that local state of emergency, because they weren't seeing full compliance. They wanted 100% compliance, which is outrageous. It should not be about compliance. It should be about infection rates. And they can say, we're renewing this after or we're looking into this after 7 days. But I don't think the citizens of the great city of Edmonton, and I'm exaggerating when I'm calling it great, it's a socialist cesspit, but I don't think that they should be having to trust the benevolence of their politicians who are using 6 people in hospital to justify this insane power grab. They can extend it 90 days. They shouldn't extend it 90 days. They shouldn't have extended it one single day. And Edmonton City Council can be mad at me all they want. They can call me not a journalist all they want. They actually pointed out that how could this possibly be the case if no other Edmonton media are talking about it? No other media are talking about it because they don't hold you to account. Yeah. That's what we do here at Rebel News. That's not a reason to call me fake news. That's the reason I exist, is because they won't do the job.
And the proof is in the pudding, Sheila. I think that video has already generated more than 50,000 views. It's really taken off, even by people that don't live in Edmonton or Alberta. They're watching it. And gee, I wonder, does this pandemic mean that Edmonton's Klondike days will be canceled, or do they still do that? that answer to the Calgary
started on Klondike days, because I loved the fact that it was Klondike days. That was our answer, like you say, to the Stampede. So the Stampede does the rodeo, and we did like Klondike days because we used to be the gateway to the north. It's where people would stop and get their supplies before they headed on to the Klondike. And I loved it when it was Klondike days. We called it K-Days for short, but everybody, the newscasters, everybody on the street, they would wear their Klondike outfits, and it was awesome, and it was about our heritage and our culture and why we were here. And then all of a sudden, the progressive Edmonton City Council, again, socialist cesspit, they decided they're just going to call it K-Days, and it's just going to be a midway. And there's no cultural implications. There's no historical implications. So while Calgary has this like ongoing stampede that's been going on successfully for over 100 years, sadly not this year, we just had like a midway that was called K-Days, and nobody understands why it's called K-Days anymore, not even reflective of the fact that it was once Klondike Days.
Wow, it sounds like
got me started.
It sounds like a sale event at a certain department store. But Sheila, I understand we have some more super chats.
We have some more super chats. We're over time.
What?
Like I said, don't get me started on Klondike days. I'm still mad about that. And that was like 10 years ago that they changed the name. Why? Because I have a really cool Klondike days outfit that I've been waiting my entire adult life to wear, and then they just canceled the whole thing. Anyways, Bruiser Battersby says, gives us $10 Canadian and says, have you read about the thousands of changes the RCMP has made to the FRT in recent weeks without any notification to the public? While everyone focuses on the riots, all our firearms are being banned. Yeah, I don't know about the rest of you firearms owners out there, but I got that handy pamphlet from the RCMP in the mail that basically said, check the website to find out if your guns have been banned. And then now they add things all the time, including a 410 bird gun and a 22, which are like a 410 bird gun. Like that's like a kid's shotgun when they turn 8, and that's banned. Kane Enmark gives us $5 Canadian, says, David, why did the lady call you racist in your video? You seem like a very friendly person to me. You're right to think that about David.
Yeah, well, apparently that's the new normal too. When you disagree with somebody, you're a racist. So.
Yeah, it's the new shut up. We've got 25, some sort of Asian currency, I'm sorry. From Benzene gives us 25, but thank you very much, and I don't see a super chat there. Proud Boys Calgary gives us $2 Canadian. Sheila, remember capital X. Yeah, that was also a reiteration of Klondike days. They called it capital X, and then nobody knew what capital X was. Capital X, like capital exhibition. And then nobody caught on to calling it that. So then they went back to calling it K-Days without actually going back to Klondike days. It is the dumbest series of rebrands that erased Edmonton history just for the sake of erasing it. And I could go on for a whole hour about what happened to Klondike days, David.
Well, you're preaching to the converted. I still call July 1st Dominion Day. I'm not happy that Justin's daddy got rid of more than a century of history in that rebranding. So I feel your pain, Sheila.
and we're way over.
Oh, well, fantastic. Well, I don't mean fantastic. I mean, I'm glad you got caught up on the Super Chats. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. As Sheila said, we've got overtime. So on the behalf of Sheila Gunn-Reid and myself, David Menzies, we will see you back here on Thursday. Tomorrow, Ezra will take over this chair, as he rightly should. And in the meantime, stay safe. Thank you.